Morning, everyone. How are we all doing? Can you all hear me okay? Great. So it's welcome, everyone, and it's lovely to be here and to have been invited by Jenny. There's many familiar faces, so it's nice to see you all. I am here to talk to you about hearing impairment and the effect of this as a silent disability. So we need to be aware and need to consider that hearing loss or hearing impairment has a huge global burden. We're looking at 1.5 billion people with some degree of hearing loss. That means that nearly 500 million people have a disabling hearing loss, and that's approximately 34 million children. It is the third most common years lived with a disability and the first amongst the sensory disorders, with an average global cost of nearly $1 trillion. This means that it has an enormous personal, social, and economic impact on people, and the challenge is ever increasing due to an aging population. In children, we have different types of hearing loss. You've got a permanent and a temporary, and in Gibraltar, we currently have 27 children with some degree of permanent hearing loss. Globally, around 60% of this type of hearing loss is preventable. We then look at temporary hearing loss, and in children in particular, 80% of children below the age of 10 will have at least one episode of fluctuating hearing loss. And this is what we locally know as glue ear. And in Gibraltar, we deal and tackle with approximately 80 children per year. The impact is quite significant for those of you who are in education or have kids. You are aware of the issues that happen with delayed speech, poor educational outcomes, and poor social skills. Causes of hearing loss in children, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but really it is important to highlight that there are broken into two: congenital at birth or acquired, and out of the congenital, it's approximately 50% of the hearing loss is due to a genetic predisposition. The rest and the other bulk of the hearing losses are usually to do with infections, so hence a strong, robust vaccination program is very important. And we need to be aware of this to enable to move forward. So the impact in adults is slightly different. And we're in a position that as we have age-related hearing loss, there's an ever-increasing population. As you can see, we have 40% of people over the age of 50 with a hearing loss and 70% of people over the age of 70. This has the impacts like we can describe: higher rate of unemployment, reduced lifelong income, but social withdrawal, communication difficulties, mental health and including depression, cognitive decline and dementia, and an overall poor quality of life. We like to describe the types of hearing loss depending on where the problem occurs or where the location of the problem occurs. There is two main types, conductive and sensorineural. Conductive means that the sound is unable to travel through the outer ear or the middle ear where the ear bones live. And sensorineural is due to the damage to the tiny hair cells in the inner ear or the auditory nerve. Apologies, I won't go into too much more detail. But it is important to note that we describe the severity of hearing loss: mild, moderate, severe, and profound. And these are examples of sound levels in different environments. So right now here, we would probably be looking at a sound levels of around 30 to 40 decibels, which is what a classroom would normally be. And as you can imagine, a child who has glue ear, that is the level of hearing loss that they have. So clearly, they would struggle in those environments. When we talk about cochlear implants, there is a very strict criteria, and people need to have a hearing loss of more than 90 decibels. And it is important to understand that. The best way of describing someone who has that severity of a hearing loss, like 120 decibels, is imagine standing by the runway barrier and seeing and feeling a plane land, but not actually being able to hear it. That's how severe the hearing loss can be. we need to recognize that it's very, very important to pick up these people who have this type of hearing loss earlier rather than later. So early detection. It is vital because, as one of these amazing medical achievements, when a child is born profoundly deaf, if they have an implant, a cochlear implant, undertaken before the age of 2, they integrate fully into full-time education by the age of 5. And that is a sliding door moment. That means that your life can go in one direction or completely in the other. And it is a huge sort of impact to the person, family, and to society in general. Let's catch up with the slides. Sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't playing the right slide. I do apologize. So that's what I was just saying. So really looking at management, these are things that we probably do ourselves all the time. We probably don't even realize this, but it's actually creating a good, normal listening environment. That is sensible. It allows us to talk to people who may have a hearing loss or may not. But, you know, we need to look at optimal lighting and room positioning, reduction of the background noise, and obviously trying to talk face-to-face with good, clear intonations. When we look at management, we can break it down into the conductive and the sensorineural, and there's a lot of personal choice here in the matter. So the patient can choose what they would like to have or how they would like to be managed. Really, the mainstay of a lot of treatment is rehabilitation with hearing aids and the use of hearing assistive devices. For conductive hearing loss, most of these can be rectified with surgery. The most common surgery is the insertion of grommets, particularly for kids, but even for adults. Whilst for sensorineural hearing loss, because of the permanency of the hearing, we are looking at cochlear implants is the only type of surgery that can be done. But in that respect, we have a very, very strict criteria. So I think it's important to recognize and acknowledge the achievements that the GHA have undertaken over the past year. We have made huge strides in detection, prevention, and intervention. We have a UK NHS standard baby hearing screening program. We have world-class audiology facilities, of which this is a picture of one of our rooms, which was opened in 2022. And now, as of this year, we undertake the full age range of audiology tests. That means that we now do children below the age of 3 are tested locally. Not only is this a cost saving for the GHA, which is great, and I'm sure that my DG would be very happy with that. We are also in a position that we save the disruption to the family and the child to be traveling to the UK for repeated testing. The last achievement that I think it's worthwhile acknowledging is the adult cochlear implant program. This was started in 2023, a cost saving of approximately £20,000 per patient. We are one of a handful of hospitals in the UK that do this type of surgery. And not only do we do the surgery locally now, we also provide and do the post-rehabilitation. As mentioned, it saves £20,000 per patient, but the patient no longer needs to stay in the UK for approximately 4 months, which is a huge impact to the patient, family, their work, career, and everything else that comes with it. I've been leading this along with my colleague, Miss Quinn, from the audiology department, as well as our colleagues from University College Hospital. The switch on moment, and you might have all seen it in these TikTok videos where the baby then starts hearing and all this, it's incredibly emotional. GBC are following the lives of a few of these people while they've gone through the process, and I was honoured and privileged enough to be in the viewing room when our first patient had that switch on moment, and she was with the audiologist, just them two in the suite, and she kept on saying that she could hear someone talking in the room. And it was her hearing her own voice for the first time in 20 years. And it was hair on end moment and everyone was crying. So you can imagine how that is. And when you have children, in particular for the parents, you are looking at them realizing that sliding door moment, realizing that they could have a child who can hear. So when that child reacts to sound for the first time, they realize that they will be in full-time education in a year and a half or 2 years, depending what it is. And I've got a very short video that's possible to just play. And if it isn't, that's fine.
Yeah, you heard it. Yay, good listening.
You can see how that would be incredibly emotional for the parent. Not so much maybe for the child, but for the parents, because they really have a full understanding of how emotive that is. We need to look at future strategies, but we need to constantly remember that hearing impairment isn't a medical problem and it isn't a personal problem to that person. We need to be looking at awareness campaigns, which the local charity GITA do quite a lot of. We need to foster community engagement and reduce stigma, I do apologize. We also need to promote early hearing testing, enhance screening and vaccination programs, and improve access to hearing technologies. With the governmental ministries and departments, we need to strengthen the hearing impairment strategy within the disability legislation. Create inclusive policies, preventative noise reduction measures, and establish targets moving forward. There was a very good report written by the World Health Organization in 2022, of which recommendations we should incorporate and look upon. And, you know, I need to recognize and acknowledge the hard work that the GITA team have been doing with the local awareness campaigns, the promotion of the BSL, and the lobbying of the government and the GHA to promote and improve services. Sorry, I'm distracted by looking at one screen and not pressing the button. So that was the previous one, and this is the one we're going to talk about now. So in summary, and I didn't want to make it too long, and I didn't want to go into too much detail from a medical perspective, because that's not the purpose of this, sort of like setting. It is a huge global burden. 1.5 billion people with this problem, and nearly 500 million people with a disabling hearing loss. Third most common of years lived with a disability, and reaching nearly now $1 trillion per year. Screening and vaccination programs are the most cost-effective ways of managing permanent hearing loss with early identification and intervention. There are different types of hearing loss, and we can manage them by different ways, and it's a personal choice to the person. We need to be thinking of ideal listening conditions at all times, but there are hearing aids, assistive devices, and surgery, including cochlear implants. So it is widespread, but it is an invisible disability. It has huge impact for the patient, the person, the education, the family life, the lifelong earnings, the mental health, cognitive decline, and an overall poor quality of life. We need to recognize the great strides that the GHA have undertaken in detection, prevention, and intervention over the past 10 years. And we need to be looking at creating a tailor-made, comprehensive and integrated strategy for Gibraltar, which should include the WHO report from 22, early detection, awareness, inclusion policies and community support, and improvement access to technologies, and ideally looking at noise reduction prevention policy. We have to remember that hearing impairment is not just a health issue. And if you would indulge me for 1 second, I've thought of a potential something for all of us to work together and we should aspire to break that sound barrier and establish Gibraltar as a global leader in hearing health and accessibility by us together working collectively, which should implement an integrated, comprehensive and sustainable hearing health strategy. Thank you very much.